What's up guys, it's Pliskin here, and today we're going to be going back into Metal Gear Solid 5 pseudo-guns, taking a category, and figuring out what those pseudo-guns are based off of in real life. Today we're going to be going over the LMG category, what I feel is the most useless category of usable weapons in the game. But that's more so a topic for another video. In this series, we don't really talk about the mechanics or balancing of these weapons, we're more so just looking at them and figuring out what real-life guns these fake guns are based off of. So, shit on my face, and let's get right on into it. So first up we have the UN-AAM. Now, this LMG is mostly found when you're going through the African map of Metal Gear Solid 5. It's usually used and employed by the mercenary troopers that you come across. Of course, if you don't want to pick it up from them, you can also develop it for yourself. Now this gun here is based off of the FN Mini-Me or FN Mag. Now this gun was a precursor to what would become the SAW and be adopted by the US military. So it's quite realistic that this gun shows up on the battlefield that Snake finds himself on, seeing that this is pretty much the SAW's older brother from the 80s. In terms of the differences between the real-life gun and this pseudo-gun that's in this game, the only thing that I can spot that really sticks out would be the stock. The stock more so resembles what you would find on the HK MG4, rather than the FN Mini-Me. That being said though, as you'll see being a trend in this video here for this category of weapons, this gun here is pretty much an obvious nod to the FN Mini-Me. Now this next one is an easy one to spot. We have the ALM-48. Now this gun you won't really find being used by the Soviets, nor will you really find being used by the mercenaries in Africa. This is more of a weapon that's almost exclusive to Mother Base. The ALM is easily recognized as a take on the M60. In fact, I wouldn't say there's much differences between this and the real thing, aside for what they had to do to keep these guns as pseudo-guns, because as a commenter of mine taught me, the guns in this game are pseudo-guns because at the time Japan was having issues with copyright in terms of the guns they featured in their games, so differences had to be made to make sure they didn't get any shit during production. So, for the sake of the ALM, what makes it different from the M60, mainly to the naked eye, would be the fact that it has a much chunkier, boxier stock. Besides that, the iron sights are pretty similar, the overall aesthetic is pretty similar. This is that big, beefy, iconic LMG. In terms of whether or not you'd see Snake using this at the time, I mean, by this point, by the 80s, the M60 was already starting to become obsolete with guns like the FN Mini-Me being a thing and later on the SAW. But there's still a good chance that due to the Vietnam War, a decent amount of them were produced and then proliferated. So I'd say it'd be safe to see these being used by the mercenaries in Africa, and it wouldn't be too implausible to think that Snake and his guys would have a couple of these on them. This brings us to the LPG-61, the LMG of choice for the Soviet troops that you'll be fighting during your time in Afghanistan. Now, this gun is almost straight up a PKM, with again those subtle differences that keep it separated from that because again of those copyright issues that Japan was having with its game development and guns at the time. However, this gun threw me off for a while. See, when I play Metal Gear Solid 5, I'm usually playing at a higher level because I've had the game for a long time and I've been playing for a long time. So when I come across Soviet troops that are using this, they're almost always using the very RPD-style drum magazine. Still in its default configuration, aside from some weird muzzle devices and shit that'll be thrown on there again to make it a little bit different, this is pretty much straight up a PKM. We can tell by looking at the stock, the wooden furniture, the way the carrying handle is, it's very reminiscent. Again, the only time this gun would deviate is when it starts looking a little bit more like that RPD, when you get that magazine style change. In terms of whether or not Snake would find this on the battlefield, it is totally plausible that he would find this in the hands of Soviet troops, seeing that the PKM was developed and released in 1969. In terms of the RPD variant though, I mean, I would like to say that it would be a lot less plausible, but even if we look at conflicts that are happening right now involving Russian troops, like Ukraine, you'll still see guys walking around with Mosin guns, so the Russian military is infamous for giving its troops outdated weaponry, so I'd say, yeah, Snake could probably come across an RPD while he's in Afghanistan too. So, in summary, we have the UN AAM, which is the FN Mini-Me, with the stock variations that look like the HKMG4. We have the ALM-48, which is just an M60 with a chunkier stock. Then we have the LPG-61, which is first and foremost based off of the PKM, but can look a little bit more like the RPD with those magazine changes that we just talked about. An interesting note that I made while going through this video is that it was much easier to do the research and figure out what these guns were based off of in comparison to other categories. For example, something like the MRS-4 can be taken apart and looked at from so many different angles, and so many different guns could be pointed at as inspirations. However, here, it seems to be that there is much more of an agreed upon consensus of what these guns are based off of. That makes me curious. Did Japanese developers just feel confident that no one would give a shit if they used LMGs that were pretty much just realistic, even during this time of copy strikes? What do you guys think? Do you know anything about this, or do you have any interesting theories? Anyways, this has been Pliskin on another episode of What Guns Should Be in the Phantom Pain, and I'll see you guys on the next video.